We have here with us Vikram Shah and from Vikram Shah Consulting, and he will be walking us through the essays. And I am Shoshi. I will be your host for this session today. There are a couple ways for you to interact with us today. On the right hand side of your screen, you can see the chat tab where we can interact among ourselves. And then we also have the Q&A tab. So if you have any questions for Vikram to answer, please write those there. We will be getting to the questions at the end of this session, so please stick around. And the last 15-20 minutes of this session will be dedicated to answering any questions that you may have. And Vikram, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shreyashi. Guys, hi. It's great to be here. Good morning, good evening, good day, whichever part of the world you are in. Um, Today we're talking about the LBS essay questions, and I think while you've already seen them, there's one new component to the essay questions this year. And before we get into that, so I think let's just get straight into it. I'm going to share my screen. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be seeing anything but the essay questions, but I'm going to flip between pages so you can see different questions. And the way we're going to structure this is I'm going to walk you through the four questions asking this year and how to tackle them. I'm also going to go through the application form questions, which has mini questions and mini essays. And before you tackle some of the main essay questions, you may need to answer those. So you're not repeating content out there. So I'll give you some instructions and guidelines on that. And then I will switch to a couple of sample essays to just help you understand some of the mistakes people make and how to avoid those. Yeah. So let me share my screen and move on. Just give me a second. Sure. So yeah, these are the essay. Is my screen visible? Shreyoshi? Nice and clear, right?
Yes, Vikram, we can see your screen perfectly.
Perfect. So I think one important thing is to keep in mind the essay question instructions, right? Which says you are required to add the word count at the end of each question, and then you stay within the limit. So the school has clearly mentioned the limit, and then you add the word count right at the end of it as well, right? So the first question, which is the main essay question, is what are your post MBA goals, and how will your prior experience in the MBA and the LBS program contribute towards these? And the word count for this is 500 words. It's given right here. So when you enter the essay, you answer your. This is actually a copy paste of the application form. You put in your answers here, and then you put in the word count at the end of it, right? So that's the first question. And the second question is, what makes you unique? Now, this is something new which they haven't asked before. And before you answer this, I mean, you can also answer this independently, and we'll come to that. But once you've done that and you've done your first brainstorm of what makes you unique, you need to go back to the application form questions to see are you repeating a lot of that content here or is this adding a fresh perspective? The third question, which is optional, is there anything or any other information you believe the admissions committee should know about you and your application to LBS? I know it says optional, but with some schools, optional means optional, and with some schools, optional means yes, attempt this question. So in LBS's case, I would say attempt this question, use this as an opportunity to sell yourself, or use this as an opportunity to clarify any uh, question marks which may be there in your application. So, for example, if you've not done a full time undergraduate course and you've done a part time program, maybe you may want to explain that why you did that and the circumstances which led you to do that. So any of those, that sort of information or choice of recommenders, right? So those are sort of questions which are typical, which you would possibly answer in an optional essay question, and you're welcome to utilize the space for that. But let's say you have none of that sort of content out there, and your application is pretty straightforward. Then you want to think of what else do you want to talk about out here in this essay, right? So before we get into brainstorming on these individual questions, let's switch over to the form questions so you know what questions are and what content is going to be covered out there. So these are the questions that you'll actually find in the application form. Question one is not really an essay, but it does require you to take about 400 words. You don't have to utilize full 400 words. It can be even 300, 200, etc. But utilize the space. So the question is about tell us about your responsibilities, your day-to-day role, etc. And this is for each job. So when you're answering this, you can, if you've been in multiple roles and each role has a significant amount of responsibility, a change or a different responsibility from the previous role, put in for multiple roles. If it's about just changing jobs and having two roles within the same organization, which is very where you don't have enough content to talk about each, then just stick to one job, one company that been in, and talk about the multiple roles as well. And you can say my initial role was this, then my new role was that. Right? Utilize the space. Make sure you're answering each and every uh, part of the prompt. That's the important part. I think when you're answering any essay question, go back to the prompt again and again and again, and see if you're addressing the question. Okay. Question two is about your academic performance. And yes, in both cases, they're asking why or why not. So your answer doesn't need to be very long. It can be pretty brief as well. But explain why you feel your academic performance gives you an accurate indication of your potential for success in the MBA program, or why it doesn't. So perhaps if your academic performance was mediocre and you didn't perform so well out there, explain why. Okay. Um, Tell us about your most significant international experiences to date. This is 100 words. But what this question does tell you is that the school is looking for people with international experience, and that's something that matters to them. The way I would prioritize significant international experience is first professional experience, second is academic, and then third is travel. So accordingly, put in your content. Now, let's say you do not have any professional experience or you have no international education experience, then you can only talk about your travels as well, right? If you have none of this, then that's a whole different question altogether, right? But then you may want to talk about experiences which have um, at least talk about cultural diversity and the diversity that you've been exposed to and through your travels, maybe even domestically, right? Because that's what the questions are all about. Perhaps if you've been in a position where you've not traveled abroad, but you've worked with international clients, and maybe you can touch upon that out here as well. But as far as possible, try and talk about your travels abroad. The fourth question is tell us about your main interests and activities in your free time. This is about what you're currently doing, not what you've done in the past. You've got 300 words out here. So you utilize this space to explain what motivates you and inspires you, how you dedicate your time, what you do in your free time, and show diversity. It doesn't need to be only just one activity, right? So it can be multiple things. Again, you can see 300 word max. So they're expecting people to bring in a lot of diverse experiences and diverse interests. So be aware of this as well. So when you're looking at what makes you unique, you know that some of these things are already covered, right? Question five, have you attended any on-campus, off-campus interviews? Yes, you can just explain that. This is not too long. Just if you have not done it, then indication that this is something you should do by now, and you've still got some time to do this. Question six, this is about the conversation that you would have with family and friends, and whether they're encouraging you to pursue an MBA or whether they're encouraging you to study at London Business School, etc. So you keep this in mind. And the last thing is about uh, conversations with LBS alumni and students. And since it's 300 word max, it's not only about giving their names and uh, the graduating class, but also telling you about your relationship with them, how you know them. Maybe you can add a little bit, a very small amount on the sort of conversation that you've had with them. But part of that would actually be repeated in the previous question. So be aware of that. Try to avoid any repetition, right? So between question six and seven, you can see a minor overlap. Avoid the overlap. The important thing out here is when you go back to question two, which is a new question, what makes you unique? You want to keep in mind that you do not want any repetition from this, the international experiences, and about the activities and interests in your free time, right? Now let's go back to the previous page, which is about the essay questions, and we're going to talk about what makes you unique first, right? Because that's relatively new. The first question is more like a standard um, career goals question, which you would probably get in from information sessions by attending other school's essay topic discussions. So, how do you, I would say, when you're tackling this question, how do you approach it? Make a list of all the possible things that make you unique. It can be experiences, it can be your personality, it can be characteristics, it can be the value system that you've grown up with. It could be the environment that you've grown up with as well. It could be the challenges that you've faced that have made you unique. It could be some of the accomplishments or the accomplishments that you've encountered and you've achieved as well. So there could be a whole bunch of things, right? So you list them all down, make a data dump. And when you're done doing that and you're done filling the application form, then you come back and you look at this question and see what really makes you you and what of that is already covered in other essays, right? And then you try and focus on the part which is not covered here. Okay. I've already spoken about the optional essay question as well, how you should tackle that. So let's say you've already addressed all the form questions, you've addressed what makes you unique, but maybe something big is missing out here. One of your greatest leadership experiences, and that really gives them an insight into who you are as a person, or one of the greatest challenges that you face in your career, one of the greatest accomplishments. Perhaps that is something that you can talk about. If there are any activities that you've been a part of which you've not got a chance to talk about anywhere, or the reason behind any of the activities that you pursued, or reason behind some of the career choices that you made, and that's not covered anywhere. Maybe those are some of the other topics that you can use in the optional essay. But this is something that you will address last. Do not touch it early, uh, because you want to make sure that there's no repetition of any of that content that you've covered already. Okay. Okay. Now let's get on to the main essay question, because this is the most difficult one and the most challenging one and the most important one anyway. So whenever you're reading an essay and you're applying or you're talking about in such an essay, I think you always want to come back to the prompt and see, are you answering each and every part of this question? So the question essentially has four parts. One part is not asked. At least it's not that evident, right? What are your post MBA goals? How will your prior experience and the LBS program contribute towards achieving your goals? So the hidden question out here is, why do you need an MBA? So the essay, essentially, you have four parts to it, right? And I would break up the essay into those four parts, and then you want to actually put things in perspective. The order, the flow in which you may start the essay with could be with your prior experience, why you need an MBA now, goals, and then LBS. Prior experience, short term goal, long term goal, why you need an MBA, then LBS, and then you could also start off with the goal and follow the order in which the prompts have been asked and answer each and every one of them. So you could clearly start off by explaining what your short and long term goal is, uh, give some background into what leads to these goals, and then talk about why you need an MBA. I think that's the hidden question out here, and that should be evident. And then how the LBS program is going to help you achieve your goals. So when you're writing this essay, you can play around with the structure, but make sure you're answering these four components. Um, I'm going to share a couple of essays that I've been given to evaluate and just kind of walk you through some of the errors that people tend to make. And I appreciate that GMAT Club has given me these essays, and I also appreciate the effort that people have taken to write them. And I would also tell you, the first essay that you write, do not focus on language. Do not focus so much on word limit as well. Focus on answering those four questions, right? Make sure you're getting those down. Um, Write plainly and with passion and with honesty. If you're not great at writing, I'll say put down everything in bullets. Just keep it simple. What tends to happen is, and that's what I'll show you with the first essay, when people take a shot at the first draft and they just start writing freely, you may come up with lots of great ideas. The story may read well as well, but there may be holes in that, right? So that's fine. Uh, I think it's simpler way is always to put down bullets and then construct sentences around them in a very, very structured manner. And then Once you have all your content and already, then you start playing with the language and it's making it flow nicely, right? But each to his own. So let me share the very first sample essay with you, and I hope it's visible. I'm going to hide some of my content, so just 1 second, rather my comments, and I'd just like you to give this a read. So I'm going to be a little patient. I'm not going to read it aloud, but I'm just going to be a little patient with giving you time to read. So if we see the very first paragraph in this 500-word essay is actually putting, is just a paragraph where the person's talking about how he was vacationing in Prague and he saw people and kids playing around him, and that kind of helped him identify his vision as such, right? And he's making a link to sort of the role that he wants to be aligned with. And I'm questioning, is the scene paragraph necessary? Why do we need this? So one of my comments out here is exactly, why do we need this, right? Working in the role aligned with my passion. Very, very vague. What are you talking about? Um, Children playing nearby. So I think only 500 words is a very limited amount of real estate space that you have. So what does any of this have to do with your career goal? For me, it's a waste of space, right? Fair enough, the candidates put something out here, but for me, it doesn't answer anything. Then the candidate goes on to talk about, in a second paragraph, being very passionate about innovative technologies to revolutionize finance. And he's talking about what he wants to do, like a big long term vision, integrating decentralized finance and artificial intelligence towards creating more inclusive society and more inclusive financial systems. Um, and he's talking about the dream, right? About improving service levels and all the possibilities out here. But what does this have to do with the goal? I can't see a clear long term goal or a short term goal of what you want to do. Nor can I see any relevance of this with the person's background information so far. Right? So there are a lot of sentences out here in disjointed paragraphs. Nor can I see the connection with the previous sentence. Sorry, the previous paragraph. So there are lots of messages here. Suddenly, it's brought in another thing about many more unbanked individuals. What do you mean? You want to expand financial service to 1.5 billion and many more unbanked individuals. Why? Were you underbanked or unbanked? Is that the problem? Is that what inspires you? So there should be some sort of personal connection, right? Right now, none of this is evident. He goes on to say, these billions include my family. Is your family underbanked or unbanked? I'm not sure. He says, my father put my savings in a local fixed deposits. So he's banked. Fair enough. So what does this have to do with the problem of being underbanked or unbanked, right? His decision was driven by lack of alternatives. Fair enough. But that's not what banking is all about, correct? Um, anyway, so he's spoken about how the currency was devalued and then he kind of maintained the wealth by investing in cryptocurrencies and all of that. Fair enough. But is this his professional experience? If this is going to be a personal experience, and the question, and you go back to the questions, how will your prior experience? So, where have you spent the majority of your time? Has it been in school, college, working? Or has it been none of this and you've just been inspired by things that have happened outside of work? So, it's not evident, right? So, then we come back to the ultimate vision as well. So if you go back, and I'm going to just do a quick word count. Sorry for moving things around so fast. If we do a word count, you spend about 300, 240 words, which is 50% of the essay, approximately, and just a background without really being very clear on what your goals are, what your short-term goal is, what company you're going to work in, what sector you're going to work in, etc. Right? nor is there any perspective about your professional accomplishments and how it ties in with your background, right? Now, in the next paragraph, he says, in long term, I aim to become a fintech company founder, focusing on innovation and inclusion. So all the past stuff that is spoken about ties in with this, fair enough, but still does not tie in with his professional experience. But in the short term, he plans to return to his MBA sponsor, McKinsey, to build on his banking expertise. So, okay, perfect. And McKinsey's got some banking expertise. Then he should be building the connection of that banking expertise with his fintech expertise, and that how that inspires him to continue here. Now, the biggest selling point, which kind of attracts me, is that he's being sponsored by McKinsey. And if he's working with McKinsey, he must be pretty bright. He must have something. He's automatically attractive to a B school because McKinsey is pretty selective in who they recruit and how they recruit, right? So why not leverage this and explain this? Now, if McKinsey is sponsoring you and you're going back to a consulting firm, so in the short term, why is McKinsey sponsoring you? Is it about you fulfilling your long term goal, or is it from the perspective of you coming back as a better consultant? What skills do you need to gain to become a better consultant? So your short term goal should be about this, about McKinsey and consulting, not so much about fintech, unless you're being asked by McKinsey to go and learn about fintech and AI and all these other things and these new age business models, etc. Right? So again, vague, but now short-term goal is evident. But if your goal is to become a fintech company founder in the short term, why would you go back to McKinsey? Why not join the fintech? Why not do something with banking financial inclusion? Why be in this space? So that's a question mark for me, which goes unanswered, right? So from the perspective of someone writing an essay, I appreciate the first draft. Write, write with passion, no problem. But then start questioning, plug holes, go back to the question. Ask yourself, are you answering the question? Is it evident? Yeah. Let's come to the next paragraph. At McKinsey, is built a strong foundation in financial services with many projects. But am I seeing anything on innovation, on using technology, on financial inclusion? Not so much. Designing a fluent banking division, right? The only other thing he's spoken about is leading an agile banking transformation. Agile banking, for me, suggests the use of technology. So maybe he may want to explore more on how he's used technology to make banking more accessible in Egypt. The other thing out here is he's spoken about Prague, he's spoken about Egypt. I have no idea where he's from, but there's a certain amount of internationalism which is coming out. And that's another thing that he could kind of build on to make him more interesting as a candidate, right? And the third thing I may also spoken about being in Kuwait and working on these international projects. So when you're writing your initial paragraph and you're writing about your essay, um, and you're talking about how your personal background will help contribute towards your goals, one of the things that you want to do is ask yourself, is there a wow factor in my background as well? And can I highlight very subtly? So it makes people take notice of me. It could be the scale at which you've done a project. It could be the sort of impact that you've created. It could be having worked in so many different countries. And all these things could be of interest. So those are things you should look to leverage in that bit where you're talking about your past and how that links to your short-term goal and how that links to your long-term goal. Right? So what did I do differently so far with this essay? I would actually completely chuck the first paragraph. That means nothing to me. I would probably start the essay with my short term goal and long term goal. And I would talk about if his goal is to get into banking and finance, then why does he want to continue in McKinsey and not move straight to a fintech? I'll kind of answer that as well. I'll probably start off my with
Sorry to be interrupting you.
sure,
Just wanted to give you a quick time check. We have about 20 minutes left, so please
sure.
continue, but just wanted to remind you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I think what we'll do is we will only go over one essay then, because I think this is a good essay to find flaws in. And if we get time, I'll do a quick review of the second essay. So what I would do differently out here is I'd completely chuck the first paragraph. Don't be passionate or don't be married to any of your content, right? Always say, can I say the same thing better? And that's the way you kind of approach an essay. Uh, Probably put in some background. Now, whether this is the best way to talk about being unbanked and all, I'm not so sure. But maybe you could start directly with your experience of McKinsey and what you've done in financial services, the growth out here, and how you've built on this agile transformation and how you are inspired by the sort of impact it can create. And then you get into your goal, whether join a fintech company or return to McKinsey. If you're returning to McKinsey, your goal should be very, very evident. Now, what this candidate has done, after that, he's spoken about London Business School and what he wants to achieve at London Business School. So LBS is excited to broaden his horizons, build meaningful connections, and explore in himself. What does this mean? He's spoken about some electives and renowned professors without being specific about who they are. I know a doctor turned consultant who learned finance at LBS. Superb. He lauded about so and so professors, behind the scenes recollection of private equity. What does that have to do with a particular course? What does that have to do with your goal? What does private equity have to do with your goal about fintech? Question mark. Who is this doctor turn consultant? What are the electives that you want to pursue? So none of that is evident, right? His next paragraph goes on to talk about building friendships and why he wants to study at LBS. Again, what does that have to do with your career goal? Is this even answering the question? LBS will allow me to build lifelong friendships. How is that important for you? If it's important for you and if it's relevant to the question why it's important for you to achieve your long term goal, put that in. And is this something that no other school can give you? So focus on things that the school can give you. All right. And then he's gone on to speak about everything else, which honestly, just the location and the flexibility of the program. So it's just too broad ended without being specific about the essay at all. I would say a great place to start is just go and look at the LBS website. Be conscious of what's there, what they're selling. Look at the program content. So let me shut this and just, sorry for that. Just switch to the LBS program content, right? You can see the learning experience, the core courses, the electives, the experiential learning, and ask yourself what's important. So in this person's case, he's interested in finance. Fair enough. What courses could he be talking about? They have so much on fintech. They have so much on uh, Python for finance, right? And these are all things which are important. So you could make that relevant. So with that, those are some of the pitfalls and errors that you want to stop. Again, to summarize, you want to go back and break up your essay into four parts. Have a background which links to your short-term goal, long-term goal, which clearly explains the need for an MBA and which clearly explains why you only want to study at LBS and how LBS is the best school to help you achieve your goals. So with that, I leave open the floor to questions, and I'm happy to take any questions right.
Thank you so much, Vikram. I'm sure the audience has found this session to be very helpful, and we are seeing such feedback on the chat too that they've been really enjoying this session. So, as for the question and answers, for the audience, please upvote the questions that you'd like to see answered, and I'll start with the most upvoted one. So, this person is asking, while answering how I will contribute to school, should it be centered around my strengths or the things that I'm going to do at school?
Good question. Nowhere is this asked as part of the application form or the essay question. So if you have to answer this, I'm assuming you're going to use this in the optional essay about how you contribute to the school, and or you're going to use this for another school, uh, maybe like a Duke or a Wharton. But the question should not be only centered around your strengths. It should be centered around things that you've done and things that you've showcased and linking that to how you're going to contribute to a particular school. So, for example, if you've been extremely active in the community, you want to highlight that evidence that you've been active in the community and what you've done out in the community and how you've contributed and sort of impact that you've created, and leveraging that experience, how you're going to contribute to a particular school through its various clubs or its various forums. And that's the way I would go about answering that question. Shreyoshi, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, let's move on to the next question, which is, what can I write to strengthen my essay if I don't have the traditional background?
Okay, so without having any perspective, it's difficult to answer. But the question about, I'm assuming this is about um, the career goals bit. So if that is the main essay, then you really want to talk about what your short-term goal is, what your long-term goal is, and your need the need for you to pursue an MBA. I think that is important, right? What can you strengthen you to strengthen your essay is to build a connection between your short-term goal and your long-term goal and your past. I think that should be evident. So, for example, let's say you're a lawyer and you want to do an MBA. Why? What is your short-term goal? How does law connect to your background? I think that's an important thing that you need to answer. And without that being evident, I mean, it's very difficult for someone to understand. So if you're coming from a non-traditional background, say you're an athlete and you want to start a business, or you want to start a sports center and coach other athletes, and you want to commercialize it, then you want to talk about the sort of skills that you need to build from there. So what inspires you to pursue an MBA and sort of skills that you want to get out of that. The good part about London Business School is they're asking a question, what makes you unique? That means the school is also looking at a lot of diversity. And that's an essay where you can really leverage your strengths. If you come from a non traditional background, you highlight the diversity that you bring to the table. Since the school is also asking questions on your academic performance, then you need to look at that aspect of the application as well and answer that question on how you feel your academic performance reflects your ability to perform on a rigorous MBA program. So the school, London Business School, is actually offering you a lot of opportunities to highlight and sell yourself uh, through all the questions and essays that they've asked. I hope that answers your question, Taiwo.
Thank you, Vikram. I'm sure that was very helpful for Tayo. And the next question's interesting. This person's asking, will enhancing the structure of the draft using AI have negative impact on the application?
So I think you can use AI to help you craft an essay, but you need to put in the content in AI as well. You need to know what you are selling. You still need to answer those four parts of it, right? As far as possible, I would encourage people to not use Chat GPT or AI or any essay writing softwares and just be original. Use your own content. Again, this is not an essay writing competition. This is about you clearly communicating your ideas to a B school, right? It's not about having fancy English. It's just being able to answer those four questions, and then that's it. So do that, right? We don't need a very, what do you call that? Glorified essay. We don't need something which is written in very fancy language. Just keep it simple. Yeah. You can use something like Grammarly to check your grammar, right? And again, structure of the essay, just give it a couple of reads. And I think one of the easiest way to check the structure of your essay is read your essay out aloud and just see if it's flowing naturally. If your sentences are too long, shorten them. But it should just be an easy read. If you find that, yes, it's too complicated, there's too much information, there's too much. At the end of reading out the essay, you're not left with any impression, you're not left with any um, perspective on what the candidate brings to the table or why he or she wants to pursue an MBA, then perhaps you need to simplify it and then revisit your structure or the language that you're using.
Thank you, Vikram. The next question actually, I can answer it. This person is asking, till when will the recordings of these sessions be available? You can actually access the recordings as soon as this event is over, and you'll have it available to you until August 15th. And another application related question now. Um, hmm. So, This person wants to know, should we include the names of current students we spoke to in our goals essay?
So, in the case of London Business School, you don't need to because they're asking the question separately. Whom have you spoken to? What is your relationship with them, etc. If you're making a reference to a particular uh, piece of information that you found out, and that's important, and then I would say yes, you can make that, but it's not required, right? In the case of other schools where there's no question on the sort of effort that you've taken to learn about the program, on conversations that you've had with people, then sure, you could mention those names of students you've spoken to in your goals essay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vikram. One question that's related to the LBS essays is, since LBS has added the new unique essay, would it be frowned upon if one writes the optional essay to talk about certain experience? Schools usually express that optional essay should only be used to cover specifics like gaps, low GPA, etc.
So again, like I explained, Garvit, um, some schools where they say optional, optional means optional, and that's what the majority of the US schools. With certain schools, they actually want you to leverage that opportunity to talk more about yourself. So, yes, if there are, if you're going to utilize that space to explain gaps, low GPA, low GMAT score, choice of recommenders, or anything else which is wrong in your application, which you've not got a chance to address in any of the other application uh, form areas or essays, then definitely use that optional essay to cover all these aspects, right? But let's say you have no such gaps or no such problems, then use this as a way to uh, sell yourself. Now you need to ask yourself, what else can I talk about? So, no, it will not be frowned upon. In fact, for me, it shows at least two LBS that you've gone a step further, really tell you to tell them more about who you are and what you bring to the table. Right. So I would go on and I would definitely encourage you to utilize that question and utilize the optional essay to sell yourself. In this
Thank you.
case, and the case of a couple of other schools, but I'm not going to discuss the other schools because this is not that forum, right? We're typically focusing only on London Business School.
Makes sense. And since we only have about 7 minutes left, let's just quickly go through the rest of the questions, as many as we can. The next
Sure.
one says, if we want to cover a leadership experience or story in an additional essay, how do you recommend we start? As in, why we are separately highlighting that?
Exactly. Ask yourself why you're highlighting that separately. What does it tell you about your candidacy? What does it tell you about what does it tell the admissions committee about who you are as a person? Are you a very collaborative leader? Are you someone who is able to step up and lead when there's a problem? So it really depends upon the story that you're talking about. But you need to ask yourself, what is it telling about who you are as a person? How is that going to add value to the program, right? Or how is that making you a stronger candidate? So go back and ask yourself that. Create a theme of why you're uh, writing that essay in the first place.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you. We don't have a lot of essay related questions left, but this is one of the more upvoted ones, uh, stating to have a chance to travel and live in UK as one of the reasons to pursue MBA. Does that sound naive or unfavorable to AdCom?
Why do you need an MBA to go and live in the UK? You can apply for a work permit and just go there. You can go and travel anywhere, right? So go. Fair enough. The question is, you're going to be spending 2 years of your life or a year of your life, $100,000, $200,000 to pursue an MBA. A school wants to know, do you really know what you want to get out of the program? Are you going to be someone who's going to be a good ambassador for the school, or you're going to have a not so good experience because you didn't know what you got into the program for. It was just because you want to travel and live in the UK and not really leverage the program, the strengths of the program, and then not get a job, not get the sort of industry and the role that you want, and then cry about the program being a bad fit. So you really want to be sure of what you want, and I think a lot of schools also want to see if whether you're employable post MBA, whether you'll be a really good ambassador out here, right? So yes, I think it sounds very naive, very unfavorable if we were just to say that's yes, it's an opportunity to travel there. You could go to a school on exchange program if that's the case, right? But why is that's your fundamental reason of making that school your home school, the main reason of why you're pursuing an MBA, spending $200,000, spending 2 years of your life there? Not a good reason for me.
Thank you, Vikram, for that candid answer. Um, One other question is, if my short term goal is to start my own venture, is it going to weaken my application?
In the case of London Business School or any other school for that matter, perhaps not. But then obviously, I would think, and the question I would ask in an interview is, if your idea is to start your own venture, why not use the capital that you're going to be investing in an MBA program in your own business? Why do you need an MBA right now? And that's one of the questions I would ask. The second thing that I would ask is that if you, I mean, your idea is, you have an idea today. Is it going to be relevant 3 years from now, immediately when you graduate from school? So it really depends, right? And obviously, if you are going to say, yes, your goal is to start your own venture and you already know what you want to do, and you're going to leverage the program to build your business out there, or uh, to validate your idea while you're at school by using the school's facilities, the incubator, etc., then sure, why not?
Vikram?
So I don't think it'll weaken. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to weaken or strengthen your application. I just think you need to build a good case for why you're starting your own venture and what the alternatives are, and then accordingly write down your short-term goal and long-term goal.
Yep, that makes sense. Those are all the essay related questions that we have on the chat for now. There are some profile related questions. And for the audience, I would say that please go to the tracker profile in GMAT Club and put your profile related questions there. Or you can reach out to Vikram at the email that I have put in the chat for these queries. Vikram, we have about 3 minutes, 2 minutes left actually. Do you want to say something to end the session?
Sure. So I will be at my booth, I think from 11:15 to 12 o'clock for about 45 minutes to answer any other questions not related to London Business School and related to other applications. Profile reviews are very, very difficult to do unless you have all the information of the candidate, unless their application and candidacy is complete, which means you have to have a GMAT and GRE score. You can't be saying that, okay, if I get a so and so score, or if this happens and if that happens, then what, right? Come to us when you have your candidacy full and complete. Um, let's not do a profile review in any of these sessions, but use these sessions to answer application related questions, fill in your doubts related to recommendations or any other strategies that you want going forward from here. So utilize the space, utilize these forums also for understanding how to approach essays. Yeah. I
Thank
hope the
you,
session
Vikram.
was useful. If you have any positive or negative feedback, please just write to me at my email address, hello@vikramshah.com, or leave me a message out here in on the chat, and I'll happily go through it. This is all a learning experience for me as well. Thank you,
All right,
Soyoshi,
sounds
so
good.
much for being such a great host.
Thank you, Vikram, and thank you to the audience.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.